in that tuning Boll Weevil that he also learned from an African-American singer. And but you get in that tuning, and it's like it's 3 D strings. You know, he used to call it dead man's tuning because you have 1 D, your low D's an octave down, you know, and so it's got this big rumble on it. And one day, well, we'd been drinking a bit of moonshine the night before, so we were, you know, a little dazed the next morning, and we got in that tuning, and David Winston, great banjo player, lives in Natural Bridge, and I had gone down to visit Tommy, and he got in that tuning, and we just started fooling around, and he started trying all these other tunes in that tuning, and I just remember it's just fun as anything, you know, but he would just, you know, he'd get a little notion like that to fool around, and it'd be fun.
Now, you've been playing fiddle yourself for how long?
I don't know, I'd probably been playing about maybe 2 years when I met him, so I guess about 40 years.
What was it like playing in front of Tommy for the first time?
You know, the funny thing is I would never play in front of him unless you asked me to. Okay. You know, it's like I would go down there and I would sit and I would listen and I would watch. And then he'd always, you know, when we'd get down, we'd bring, you know, he was living on a pension. Yeah. And for most of his life, nobody knew outside of the area knew he played music, you know. And then all of a sudden, after he retired and his wife died, you know, some people so-called discovered him, and he started making records and traveling around all these festivals all over the place. And when we first started going, it wasn't, you know, too hectic down there yet. But the last couple times I saw him, it was unbelievable. He said, "You wouldn't believe it, how many people are coming in here, you know." And not everybody realized that he was an old man on a pension, you know. So when we'd get down, we'd bring potatoes and beans and milk and 100 proof whiskey and eggs. You know, you just bring a bunch of provisions because you'd be staying there, and you knew he loved to cook. Right. And he'd always cook for you. He's a great host. But, you know, you didn't want to run him into pie. Exactly, you know. And so, let's see, how did we get on the food thing?
Well, I was just wondering what it was like playing in front of him. Man.
Oh, okay. So when he'd go in to cook, then he'd say, "You boys play me a tune," you know, and we'd sit down and we'd play while he was in there cooking, you know, and he'd pop in, maybe sing a verse, or he'd come in and dance a little flat foot to it or whatever, you know. And it wasn't until, I think I'd been going down there for a couple of years before I ever sat down and played with him. You know, I mean, I dared not, you know what I mean? It was just like, you were there, I felt like I was there to watch and listen until he asked me to play.
Now, was Tommy good about it? Sometimes he might say, you know, you might want to try playing it this way, or?
Absolutely. You know, after we got to be friends, you know, and he knew that I wanted to get this, you know, then he felt a lot freer. You know, otherwise there's a lot of people coming in, you know, he doesn't want to make anybody feel bad. But once he sees you're serious about it, then he'll, you know, give you advice. And of course I'd ask him for advice, you know, but I remember him, and we have some of this in the play, because the play is basically 2 narrators, you know, looking back on their memories of their visits to Tommy. And one is kind of a good old boy like Riley, you know, and the other is kind of an urban sophisticate, and Ira plays that. And they kind of have different perspectives of this. And so there's a little bit of comedy there of those guys playing around with that, you know. But they share their love for this man who shared his music and his life with them, you know. So, you know, you play the tunes, and so there's a part in the play, you know, where he's giving advice on, you know, I remember him telling me some bowing stuff, for example, because the bowing in Tommy's fiddling is absolutely unique. I don't think there's another American fiddler nowadays that uses that kind of bowing. It's 19th century fiddling, you know. Now, the other character that we have in the play is Fred Cockerham, and of course, he was a contemporary of Tommy's and a cousin and a good friend, and I loved when they played music together. And had the good fortune a couple times of being there when they were there together and playing together.
Well, perhaps we ought to pull the Tommy and Fred CD out and play something from that.
That would be great. And also maybe Riley doing the long steel rail that he got from Fred.
Well, right now we got that fiddle over to the side. Maybe we can encourage you to.
All right.
What are you gonna do for us?
I'll tell you what. I'll do Poor Ellen Smith, because this is one. This is an actual event that happened in that area of North Carolina, and Tommy always told the story about it because his father went down to Winston-Salem, where the guy who had was accused of the murder was in jail. And he wrote this song and was selling it through the bars of the window in the jailhouse. And Tommy's father bought the words and brought it home. And so Tommy would tell the story, and I'll tell you the rest of the story after you hear the ballad, okay? It's Poor Ellen Smith. It's poor Ellen Smith, how was she found? Shot through the heart, lying cold on the ground. I held back my tears when people said that Peter DeGraff had shot Ellen Smith dead. While I would have never made her my wife, I loved her too dearly to take her sweet life. They got their Winchesters, they hunted me down, but I was away in old Mount Harry town. They took me to Winston, my trial to stand, to live or to die, as the law may command. MacArthur will hang me, he will if he can. Lord knows if they hang me, I'll die an innocent man. It's poor Ellen Smith, how was she found? Shot through the heart, lying cold on the ground.
Live right here on Folk Beyond. James Leva. They're doing Poor Ellen Smith, a tune you learned from Tommy.
Right, and I remember the first time he played that tune for me, so he told me about his father going to get the words, and he said, now, it was a $50 fine to sing that song in Mount Airy, because it was a big controversy. It was like the Trayvon Martin of its day, you know. And so I said, well, what happened to him? Because, in the words it says, MacArthur will hang me, will if he can. Lord knows if they hang me, I'll die an innocent man. I said, what happened? He said, oh, they hanged him. And I said, and he didn't do it. He said, hell yeah, he done it. He got her big, and he got scared and shot her and tried to burn her up in a brush pile. So you got the news, 80 years later.
Oh, goodness. Well, if you're just tuning in, folks, we've got James Leva in, and James has got a play called A Kindly Visitation that will be put on at the theater at Limekiln in Lexington, June 30th and July 1st, and it's memories of Tommy and stories about Tommy Jarrell.
Like I said, it's the two narrators recalling their visits and the tunes they learned. So there's tons of music, but with the music are the stories that they remember him telling. And it's a storytelling technique. So like people are saying, well, who plays Tommy? Well, we have a hat. And whoever puts on the hat at that moment is the flashback of Tommy telling you the story.
Okay.
So we swap the hat around, you know, and the stories come that way. And then we have Fred Cochran there. Whoever puts the glasses on is Fred for that minute to tell that story. So it's about memory as much as it is about anything.
And so you, as you said, you've got Ira and Riley doing the country boy and the city gentleman.
Right.
And then you and Danny Nicely.
We're the musicians, and we fill in the storytelling. We tell some of the stories and put the hat on and the glasses on. You know, we do our part.
And that will be going on June 30th, July 1st over at the Theater at Limekiln. You can visit, of course, jamesleva.com or the Theater at Limekiln's website. Or, of course, we've got a page up all about James's visit here to Folk and Beyond this very day with all the various links. Well, you were talking about Riley Bogus there just, yeah.
Yeah.
Just a moment. Okay.
Yeah, in the play, he does long steel rail that he learned from Fred Cochran. And I believe you've got a recording of it so they can get an idea. You know, it goes, there are things that are solo, and there are things, there's a lot of group music. I mean, that area is known for the fiddle banjo duets. We'll talk about that more. But this is a banjo solo Fred Cochran masterpiece. I think Riley nailed it.
Well, not live, but from Riley Bogus's album, Long Steel Rail, we're here the title tune.